Hi there, and a very warm welcome to this Q&A session. So 2 weeks ago, I made my Patreon announcement, and I talked to Cornelius, and he said maybe it would be a good idea to also do a Q&A. And this is this set Q&A, so you could ask me questions in the comments, and now I'm trying to answer them here. Small disclaimer, there will be probably a lot of jump cuts, as I'm not used to doing long-form video and talking about without stumbling over my own words, so please keep that in mind. Without further ado, let's get started. So I categorized those questions after I received them into a couple of categories. So there is freelance and lifestyle, software, hardware, and last but not least, there is nerdy. So let's go all through them. I won't be answering all of them in depth since I don't want to make a 2-hour video for your sake and also for my sake, because editing stuff like this always takes time. So let's get through this and hopefully it gives you some answers that you're looking for. The first question in the freelance and lifestyle category comes from Bulba, and he asked what makes me interested in CG in the first place. So basically it was a couple of things, but mostly movies. So it's the early 90s and I watched movies as a kid, for example 1993's Jurassic Park, and I was always fascinated by how things were made with a computer that looked photorealistic, and as you know me, I love my photorealism. So this is also a big role that played part in why I'm interested in CGI. Because I was always fascinated by those oil paintings of the old masters and how they got this incredible depth and realism into those. And basically CGI is a great tool of getting realistic images out. So it's like a formula, it's like a cooking recipe. So if you put in the right ingredients, you get out the realistic result. And that's basically also what I'm trying to teach in my tutorials and trainings and so on. So yeah, those are the things that made me started. So the next question is coming from Tusu Rockstar. Basically, I have my reading points here so I don't get distracted. And he wants to know my career basically. So let's make this really short to not get boring. So it's all started with a burned CD. So I have a friend and he burned me a CD basically with some music on it, but I noticed there's no music on it. So I put it into my CD-ROM drive on the computer and it was full of ripped software, including Cinema 4D. So I open all the software. For example, I opened 3D Studio Max before Cinema 4D, fun fact. Because the folder with 3 is first and then C is later. So I opened that and it wouldn't run. So I opened Cinema 4D and hey, here we are, I'm using Cinema 4D. So basically that's the beginning of all of it. Now there's some things in between. So I was looking for a university that offered 3D services. But back when I started, there were only like private ones that were really expensive. So what I did was I went for a graphic design school. So I basically, my certificate is as a graphic designer, not a 3D artist. So I did all that, but in the meantime, when I did, or in the time frame when I did this learn graphic design, I, in the spare time, went on learning 3D. And when I applied for a job later, I actually didn't apply for a graphic designer's job, but for a 3D artist job. And I was accepted there, but I noticed rather quickly, it was in the advertising market, that it was way too stressful for me, and I wasn't good at handling those stress levels. So I thought maybe I would further study on, and I applied to the Film Academy Ludwigsburg. And this is also the reason why I'm still here in Ludwigsburg. So I went there, I moved there, and when I got there, basically I was accepted at the second time in the Film Academy, the prestigious Film Academy. And after about 2/4 of a year, I noticed that it is also not for me. So the reason was that in the first 3 years, you do everything film. So not only 3D animation, you also go through all the film apartments, so camera, screenwriting, directing, and so on. So like it wasn't resonating with me. I like my space, and on set that's always incredibly packed with a lot of people, and you have to make decisions fast and stuff like that. And stuff like that is not for me. So I felt very pressured. So I canceled that, and I worked from home for about 1.5 years. And then I met my colleague that I have the shared office here now, and we opened this shared office space here. So yeah, that's where I still am. That's where we're filming right now. You can't see a lot of it, but I have made this small office peek video. When you're interested, if you're interested in seeing more of the office space, you can click on that. It's somewhere up here. All right. Next question comes from George Luna, and he asks what I do to stay motivated and produce such great content. Thank you very much for your compliments. I really appreciate that you like my content. Hopefully that one too. So basically, this is a fast-moving time period here. So stuff never moved as fast as right now. So it's very difficult to stay motivated, at least for me. And maybe that already helps you to see that I'm struggling to stay motivated right now. So for example, with this video, I take it at a step-by-step basis. So as I said in the beginning, I'm not really great at making long-term videos, at talking over a long period of time without stumbling over my own words. So I take it step by step. I go in the office in the morning, then I say, okay, let's set up the lighting, let's set up the camera, let's order the talking points and make a list there. And then I go and put the camera on record, and basically I go through it step by step. And in the end of the day, that's much better than to have procrastinated all of the time, which I always do, and it's bad. So yeah, let's go step by step. That's one of the things to motivate myself. And when you finish something, you have this high, and you can jump on other projects and then have the energy to push through them too. Now, the other thing that's really important for me is to touch base with other artists to stay grounded, basically. So I'm talking a lot with Cornelius Demrick, and we help each other by talking to each other and talk about what's going good today, what's not so good today, and it's like having someone to talk to is really good, and it's even better if this someone is Cornelius Demrick. No, if this someone is in the same field as you are. So they have the same problems, basically, and they know what you're talking about. Also from George Luna and Zachary Blythe, I'm sure I'm butchering some names here. So those both, like the second question from George and the first one from Zachary, are basically the same. And they are asking what I'm doing in my spare time. Very interesting. So let's make this rather short. In my spare time, I do most of those things I also do in my job time. So basically, it's not a lot of difference there. So one of the other hobbies I have is home cinema. So I'm a really cinema enthusiast, and I have a big projection screen at home with a good pair of speakers and a surround system and good subwoofers. And yeah, I enjoy movies, and this comes back to the first question that's still inspiring me, watching good movies. So I really am looking forward to, for example, Oppenheimer or the second part of Dune that comes out in cinemas. And it really helps that next to my town here, there's the biggest screen on earth, IMAX open there with the biggest screen on earth. And I go there constantly and watch movies there because the experience is so great. So yeah, shout out to I'm Max Leonberg here. All right, let's go on to the next question. Did I even answer that one? Well, no, not really in all of the points. So what I'm also interested is, as you just heard, cinema and of course computers, because they are also connected with this whole space of home cinema, 3D and compute. And then the only hobby I have that's not connected to all of this space is probably cycling. So I cycle a lot. So I don't have a car, I don't have a driver's license. So I kept on cycling. And this is basically also a hobby. So if I go, for example, visit my brother, he lives 60 kilometers away, I try to go by bike if the weather allows it. And usually I'm not as great. My brother's a much better biker, so he can drive or go for 200 kilometers without a problem. He's a lot older than me and still can do that. So big respect for him. And when I go visit him, after 60 kilometers, I'm done. I can't do any more meters there that day. So yeah, that's about that. So let's go on with the next question. Next question is from Rob Starr, and he basically wants to have tips for freelance artists. And he notices that a lot of the working relationships are vitamin B, as we call it in Germany. I'm not sure if it's the same words in English. But basically, if you know people that know clients, you have much greater chances of landing the gig and stuff like that. Small disclaimer here, I am only me, I have my set of experiences, I don't know you specially, so it's hard to give a tailored answer to such questions. So I'm trying to give a broader range of answers here. So basically, 2 points are very important, and I could learn from my own words here. So first of all, learn the business side of things. You are an asset, you are a value for people, and that's the thing. You have to know your value, you have to know to sell yourself. And that's really important, and this is what I'm not doing enough, I think. So, but you're not me, you can learn all this. And the second thing is learn to network, because that's equally important. As you just said, it's good to have a good network of artists and also clients. And I always start with artists because I can make better friends with them. I'm not good at like a small talk, but talking about 3D stuff always works. So getting to know other artists is really good, because other artists don't have time all the time. So if they have jobs and they don't have time to do them, they might ask fellow artists if they are in the position to take on the job. And this is also a good way to get jobs there. So yeah, that's my answers here. Oh, and one more thing, do spare time projects. At least that always helped me. When you have people looking at your work, what you can do with spare time projects is basically make them look at your best self. So you can show them what you could do, what you're able to do when you're working at your highest level, basically. So that's always a good thing to show to people, and have ready if asked. And also it's a good way to gain new clients. They can see what you're doing, what you're interested in, and then based on that, they're requesting you to do their job. Sometimes the job offer doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing, but also feel free to then just say no, because you want to steer in the direction where you have fun with the projects and not do like 9-to-5 hour work that you don't like to do, obviously. So yeah, maybe that's a very basic tip, but here we go. Let's move on to the next question. Or I have to say questions, because those are coming from Simon Trickfilmer, and he has quite some of them. So the first of them is, did it get harder to get jobs as a freelance artist recently? And yes, I noticed that too. I don't have a global overview, so I am not really certain how this is globally. But for me, since the beginning of the year, getting jobs is incredibly slow. And yeah, this is also why I have so much time for my YouTube channel, why I also have time to build smaller projects that you can see on Twitter or Instagram. So this is actually his next question. Is there a plan B for that? So yes, obviously you can also work at a grocery store if you don't make enough money as a freelancer. But usually freelancers are creative people, and working at a grocery store is not the first option to choose. So what I always have as options is obviously like getting your name out there, trying to make some spare time work. Anything is better than sitting around and doing nothing. So if you're there and don't get any jobs, do something, make something on your own and get it out there, get people's attention, and try to get jobs basically coming in. And of course, you can always be employed. So if you get the word out there that you want to be employed again and don't want to freelance anymore, there's always a good chance you can make that step happen. Obviously, if you want to be freelance and want to stay freelance, then your best chance is to get your work out there, get people interested into you, network, the things I have said before. Now up to the next question, and we are moving into the next section of our Q&A, and this is software. So the next question comes from Primax, so let's read that. What software got you started in 3D, and if you could swap all your knowledge to another software, which would it be, or which would you pick? So basically, as I said before, I started with Cinema 4D, and it was a burned CD with cracked software on it. And I guess that's how a lot of us got started. And I basically have no regrets for that, not getting the correct software, but starting up with Cinema 4D. It's a great software, and it's a great software still. And I think I would not trade my knowledge for any other software, despite other software packages are rather easy to learn, especially nowadays with the internet. So you can just learn another software package. For example, when I left that out in my career path. So I worked for Access Animation for a short while, and I went to Glasgow, Scotland for a couple of times and worked there. And they worked with Houdini, and I never touched Houdini before. But when you're working in a work environment with a software, you never learn a software that fast. So that's really great for learning software. Just jump into the deep, take the plunge and learn it. And then you're there in no time. And the better you know how 3D works, how math in 3D works, the faster you're going to learn the new software. So I'm also learning Blender next to Cinema 4D, and I'm really enjoying it. So I would add to that. So if you are starting your 3D career now, I would rather learn Blender than Cinema 4D because it's a good starting point and more people use it. They have good funds, they have a broad feature set, and they are having a great community. Also with development, they are developing rather fast. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. So let's go to the next question here. So next question is from George Luna again, and since I put in different sections, this is the software section now. So he asks about the experience with Unreal and its own path tracer and if I used it before. So the answer is no, I didn't use it. I'm very comfortable within my own ecosystem. So if you're using Unreal to do big scenes, for example, big landscapes or road networks or something like that, or big cities, I guess there's an advantage here. But for me, who is doing like table-sized projects and product visualization, I don't think that there is this big advantage in there. And learning Unreal is a whole lot different than learning another 3D package, because there's somehow this difference between gaming 3D and like broadcast or visual effects 3D. So yeah, that's the thing that's holding me back. And maybe I'm old school for that, but that's how I am and that's how I roll. So for me, probably the best software package combo would be Cinema 4D, Blender, and Houdini. So I can do whatever I want with those packages. Now, I do barely do Houdini, but that can change any moment. So let's see what the future brings. Oh yeah, Pixelasm also had the same question as George Luna. Sorry for not naming you together with him, but it's all about the answers, hopefully. So on to the next question, still software from Daniel Cuoto. And this is about AI. Now, I have to say, I've been waiting for AI questions, and thank you for not spamming me with AI questions. So his question is if I use AI in my current workflow. No, the only thing I use AI for at the moment is ChatGPT to help me write scripts and to program some stuff. So, yeah, that's the only thing I use AI for right now. His other question was if I see an impact on CG artists' work from AI in the future. And yes, of course, I think it will not only impact 3D artists, it will impact the whole society. So I think that we are in a global change right now on the scale of the original industrial revolution. So we will see how that will pan out. And I truly think that there will be a lot of change happening here to the better and the worse. So as always with change, there are losers and winners. So let's hope that there are more winners than losers in that. So next we are in the hardware section, and in the hardware section Peter Bocour asked a question about my eGPUs. So if you know my office tour or my office sneak peek, I show those eGPUs, and this is where the question comes from, how I integrate those into my system. So I have planned in the future to make a video about like the eGPUs because I received so many questions about them. But to be very short, there are motherboards out there that have already Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 3 ports, and you can connect your eGPUs to that. I myself opted for a add-in card, so a PC Express add-in card to Thunderbolt, and this card has two Thunderbolt ports on it, so I can adapt two eGPU enclosures to that. And that's the long and short answer to that. So if you want to know more, just ask me in the chat or just wait for the eGPU video. And I just realized Peter Bocour was the only one in the hardware section, so now we go on to nerdy. Let's see what the nerdy section gives us, and we have Aldo Librian, and he asks, how do I make realistic materials in Octane, and what should be understood in a basic way in the node editor for beginners like me? So my answer consists of 3 points here. So first of all, the most simple one is Google PBR materials, so physically based materials. And you will find a lot of answers there already. So what the materials we have in our world are made up of, what settings they are represented with in our 3D software, and so on. So this is my first answer. The second answer is maybe look at Blender Guru's videos. So he has a series of rather basic videos about features that every 3D artist should know. And I watch them myself every now and then because it's always good to be reminded of the basics. And yeah, he has a video about PBR materials. And don't worry, it's about Blender. Basically, the workings in all the render engines, if they are physically based, are the same. And last, third point, just read up on it or just trying to learn it. So if you spend more time really digging in, you of course will get better. So that's what I did. Back in the day when I started, there was not a lot of content for materials. And yeah, so I searched all over the internet and found what I needed to know and then learned it and tried to replicate it in my software. And step by step, again, got better at it. And now I give trainings and courses about realistic materials. So that's how it goes. Yeah, maybe you can do courses if you really dig in the future too. Next nerdy questions comes from Andreas Resch. So he asks about the HEX. So I have made a video about the HEX color profiles or the HEX tone mapper. So he asks, there is a profile that's not coming directly from HEX and it has a lot more options than just HEX. And he asks if I ever used any one of the other options. And my answer is no. So if you are working in a Alexa color space, this is only good for grading. This is not for final presentation. So no one using Alexa color space for cinema, for example. This is all being converted into the native DCI-P3 cinema color gamut. So what I'm saying here is I usually work in bigger color spaces as ASUS CG or ASUS 2065-1 and then convert down to whatever screen space I have. And what I mean by that is basically Rec 709 or sRGB for my presentations on YouTube. And like if you extend that, I don't do that, but if I would present on cinema, then I would go and export that as DCI-P3 color space. So going over other color spaces as ARRI Alexa is not really worth it. So that's my answer. Of course, always if you are artistically drawn to it and if it looks good to your eyes, then yeah, do it. Do whatever pleases your fancy. Is that a thing to say? I don't know. Let's get on with the last question. And that is the most nerdy of them all. So it's from Procedural Notes 3D, and the question is about OSL and how it's not possible to put closures on OSL nodes in Octane. So basically what's it about? In Redshift, for example, you can define whole materials within one OSL script, while as in Octane, you basically do simple pixel math in OSL. So you only have access to the pixel level and not to the material level. And yes, this is a limitation and it's not possible to gain access to material level within OSL. So you can use whole already packaged Octane materials to put your OSL into to drive that aspect. But other than that, this is a limitation, unfortunately, and it's not possible. All right, and that concludes my Q&A session. So it was, again, a long video with me talking quite a lot. Hopefully, later in the editing part, I may manage to make it a bit more smooth and fluently, because right now, as I'm talking to the camera, there were quite some hiccups and stumblers in there. So let's hope for the best and let's hope for the most entertaining outcome for you. Hopefully you like what you heard, you liked my stories. So thank you very much for staying with me to the end. And that concludes that video. So have a great weekend, have a great time, and see you again later. Bye bye.